From Richard purposely creating the Joy virus, starting a zombie-like apocalypse at school, to later in this video finding out how the Joy virus actually works, today I solved the biggest mystery in the amazing world of Gumball's darkest episode, which is none other than the Joy. Now, Gumball is usually termed as a kid's show. Sure, it might take a stab at some darker elements here and there, but the Joy is a full-on zombie horror nightmare, taking inspiration from different zombie and found footage films. But what makes this episode so creepy? And what mysteries come from it? Well, before we can find that out, first we need some context. The Joy begins with Gumball and Darwin angrily walking into the kitchen with the biggest frown known to mankind, which could only mean one thing: it's a Monday. Richard sees this and asks if the kids want a Wonder Hug, which is filled with all of the love and happiness in the world, to which the kids decline. But Richard being Richard hugs them anyway, and an explosion of rainbow colors occur. But at the time, they didn't think much of it. When Gumball and Darwin arrive at school that morning, everyone is depressed with Monday morning misery, which their teacher, Miss Simeon, feeds off of because she loves seeing students suffer. Despite everyone being super unhappy, Gumball and Darwin start to become uncontrollably happy, singing during their surprise test.
God says keep smiling, homie. How dare you sing in my class?
Heel clicking through the halls and constantly smiling. Even when they try, they still can't stop this joy. Miss Simeon immediately notices that something is wrong with them, as she believes that the joy is not a result of two happy kids being happy, but in fact is a dangerous disease that needs to be treated immediately. The joy then spreads to their brains and causes them to hallucinate that Miss Simeon and the nurse are a cute stuffed monkey toy and a candy cane respectively. Miss Simeon then decides to quarantine them as their condition gets worse and worse. They keep hysterically laughing until the heart rate monitor they hooked up becomes rainbow as the joy fully takes over. They break out of the quarantine room and hug both Principal Brown and the nurse, infecting them both with the Joy virus. Miss Simeon is able to get away and lock herself in her office, but it's too late as the infected hug more and more people in the school halls, turning them all into zombie-like creatures. As all hope seems lost, Miss Simeon accidentally turns on the cassette player with depressing classical music. This causes the infected Principal Brown to start crying and then suddenly turn back to normal. Miss Simeon then has a plan to hook up the cassette player to the PA in Principal Brown's office to play the song for all the infected to hear, in the process curing them all. And at first, this seemed like a pretty good plan, but in order to do that, she must get past the hallway riddled with the infected. She tries to get around them, but quickly fails, and is now chased by all of them until she makes it to the office. But once she gets there, the song is finished, and if you don't know, in order to repeat a song on a cassette player, you have to rewind all the way back to the beginning. She tries to do this, but it's too late as the infected tackle her to the ground, and although she puts up a good fight, she succumbs to the joy. And that's the episode. We don't see anyone come to save the school. It just ends on Miss Simeon being infected and laughing creepily. It's really ironic that an episode titled The Joy has the most miserable ending, and the first mystery that we're gonna look at and actually try to solve comes from that ending, as many believe that the events in the episode in the school was somehow cured off camera. One popular theory is that Principal Brown, after being cured, escaped school and told the Elmore Health Organization about the outbreak and how to cure it. This theory does make sense, as Principal Brown did hear the classical music being played, so he could probably put two and two together and figure out how to stop this. However, where the theory falls apart is that Principal Brown would have had to make it out of the school without being infected again. But when he runs off, he's clearly panicked, which would make him a prime target for the infected. Also, he's very slow. His character design is even inspired off a slug, so he probably can't outrun them. Another theory is that Tobias was the one to cure the school, since his rainbow color gave him immunity to the disease, but it's made very clear that Tobias doesn't care about the disease, and probably wouldn't go out of his way to help cure it.
Ladies, contaminate me. The flower boy, typical.
The most popular theory in regards to this idea is that the disease itself is temporary and will go away after some time. I imagine the effects are temporary, so they all passed out and woke up really confused. Although this is the strongest theory we've heard of so far, there is no evidence to support this claim, making it more of a convenient assumption. In my opinion, the strongest theory as to how the school got cured is similar to that in a lot of the other episodes where the characters have a major problem, the universe seems to reset itself and all their problems get erased. This phenomenon was made clear in the episode The Finale, where it seemingly looks like the Watersons are gonna get completely destroyed, until Gumball says,
The only thing that can save us is reality being completely reset by some kind of magic device!
and then the credits roll with the family being back to normal in the next episode. We don't know. Maybe the world reset itself after the episode ended. Like, what happened to the finale? This explains how the show can go on when a seemingly life-altering or life-changing event happens. Like, for example, in The Fraud, the entire freaking school blows up. But in the next episode, it seems like nothing ever happened. So I believe that the same thing happened after The Joy. When the credits rolled, the universe reset like none of it ever happened. Another question though that arises in this episode is the cure. Miss Simeon finds out that Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, her favorite song, can actually revert the transformation. But why? Well, the reason the sonata is her favorite song is due to its depressing nature. To her, it's basically the anthem of sadness. It's so sad, in fact, that it causes the infected Principal Brown to turn back to normal and start crying. So it seems like intense sadness is what can cure the joy, which is pretty ironic since the whole episode started because Gumball was depressed, and now we're trying to turn them from happy back to sad. It comes full circle, but back on track. In the end of the episode, despite being hugged by many students, Miss Simeon still doesn't turn into a joy zombie. Although she eventually does give in at the end of the episode, she puts up more of a fight than any of the other students who immediately turned into it after being hugged. This is probably because Miss Simeon's love for all things depressing probably gives her some level of protection against the joy virus, further strengthening the idea that the cure for the joy is depression. Many people refer to the joy as a virus, including the Gumball Wiki. This is likely due to how the zombie infection in the movie Quarantine is also a virus, and this episode was heavily inspired by the movie. However, this clearly isn't any normal virus, which shows us that there is something more beneath the surface. But then, what is this disease? Well, it's made pretty clear that the joy is causing its hosts to act in a way that they wouldn't normally, suggesting that it has some kind of control over them. This indicates to me that the joy is actually a sentient thing that tries to spread itself across multiple hosts via hugging. This argument is supported by how the disease is aware and adapts to its conditions, initially tricking Gumball and Darwin into trying to hug the teachers, but more gently and innocently. But when Miss Simeon wasn't reciprocating and restrained them, the disease understood it had to be more aggressive and violent if it wanted to spread. So therefore, I believe that the disease is some sort of sentient pathogen that can be passed by hugs. But this raises another big question. How do the hugs transmit disease? Richard's Wonder Hug initially caused an atomic bomb to go off in their house, but the rest of the deadly hugs just seem to be regular hugs. There are cases where diseases can be transferred via touch, but it isn't usually like that if the person's hand, or whatever they use to touch the other person, is covered in bodily fluid like saliva or mucus from coughing into their hands. However, the infected don't seem like their hands are covered in fluids, right? Well, while their hands might be clean, if you take a closer look at their mouths, you see this strange rainbow liquid, and it's shown in the episode that Coach coughs this rainbow liquid into his hands. This indicates that the rainbow liquid is what actually transmits the disease. This also confirms that the disease is actually a virus, as viruses are usually spread through the exchange of bodily fluids. So what is the joy? Well, I believe that it's a sentient virus that spreads itself through rainbow liquid, which contaminates all the hosts' hugs to try and find more hosts to help spread the virus further. But the final and undoubtedly the biggest questions in regard to the virus come from its origins, and specifically Richard's involvement. The first people to get this virus were Gumball and Darwin, who were given the Wonder Hug by Richard, seemingly inflicting the disease onto them. However, Richard also seems completely immune to the disease, which has sparked many theories. One of them being in the same Reddit post by YouThinker227, who argues that it could be Richard's stronger adult brain. My best guess is that Richard's adult brain can handle more happiness and joy, but this theory falls short since Miss Simeon, Rocky, the nurse, and Principal Brown all get infected despite being adults. So no, I believe the reason that Richard is immune is because Richard already has the joy virus, and the disease can't alter his psyche because he's just too damn happy.
I'm a bun, I'm a bun, I'm a tasty, tasty bun.
Meaning the joy virus doesn't have any control over him. If Beethoven's sadness can overpower the joy, then why can Richard's happiness overpower it? And why would Richard spread the disease? It's Richard. He's a loving father, and he would never put the lives of his own children in distress, right? Well, we all know that Richard is a very kind-hearted person. However, his biggest flaw is his stupidity. In trying to fix a situation, he can make it 10 times worse because he doesn't particularly have much going on up there. So his solutions are usually short-sighted and could put the lives of others in danger. And I believe this episode is a prime example of this. Richard tries to give the kids a wonder hug in order for them to not be upset anymore. However, he didn't foresee the consequences, and since he's immune to the disease, he thinks the wonder hug will just make them happier, without knowing the true extent of the disease. This also explains why the disease tries to spread itself. As established previously, the disease is sentient and wants to infect everyone, but the answer why is unclear. Richard's intent of trying to cheer the kids up was reflected in the virus, who tries to cheer up all the other depressed kids in school, but instead is a lot more aggressive. So Richard, in trying to help the kids, accidentally created a virus which wants to cheer up the kids by turning them and their entire school into zombies. Yeah, pretty much sounds like Richard. So I can safely say we solved this episode as much as we could, but there will always be those unexplained mysteries that we might just never know.